You're listening to Reforming the Ozarks, a podcast serving the local church in Southwest Missouri with biblical teaching and Reformed theology. To learn more about our churches, please visit ctkjoplin.com and gospelsgf.org.
Welcome back to Reforming the Ozarks. Good to be back with you for another episode. My name is Levi Bakerink. I'm the pastor of Christ the King in Joplin, Missouri, and Dustin Ray is back with me, as always, pastor of Gospel Fellowship in Springfield. We are excited for another episode, and we're going to talk all about certain myths, and I can't even think of the word I was trying to think of there. Fables, tall tales, things about Reformed theology and Presbyterianism and Calvinism and things like that. This is our myth-busting episode we're going to do, just try to talk through as many questions that people have sent in and other questions that we hear all the time about what even it is that we believe. So we're getting into some of those today. We're looking forward to that. But before we jump into that, though, Dustin, tell us how you're doing and how everything's going in Springfield.
Well, things are good up here in Springtown. We were away for a little bit. My wife and I celebrated our 16-year anniversary, and so we went and floated the Buffalo River down in Ponca, Arkansas, the worser half of the Ozarks in Arkansas.
Indeed, yes,
that's right. Got burnt bad, like blisters. So anyway, it was great. It was worth it. But anyway, that's not what you asked for. Gospel Fellowship, it was awesome having Aaron Rains, also a PCA pastor, Christ Church Bentonville, a friend of the pod.
From the worst part of the Ozarks, but yeah.
From the worst part of the Ozarks in Arkansas. So he's going to be so mad. But he, as I told him, he preached a sick sermon. He said that's the first time he ever heard that he preached a sick sermon, and I was like, "Well, get used to it, bud, because you're a great preacher." And it was awesome. He preached on the office of deacon. It really, I mean, no joke. It was awesome. I really enjoyed it. So, but back to having me in the pulpit. But we've got a baptism this coming Sunday, which we could talk some about. It is of an infant of two believers, and so we're excited to celebrate that. And those folks are coming on as members as well at Gospel Fellowship. So we've got some really cool things going on. We've got a women's Bible study that's starting tomorrow. We've got a men's fellowship event on Saturday. All those things are on our church center that you can sign up for. We'd love to have you at those. We've got more things coming up this summer that I'm excited about that I'm going to keep quiet on because I don't know the timing on some of those things. But man, we're thankful for God's faithfulness to us. A year ago we didn't think we'd be experiencing the Lord's blessing in the way that we have, and so we're thankful to Him. So, but yeah, you guys have some exciting things coming as well. Levi, tell us about things that are going on at Christ the King's Joplin. Sorry, a little slip in.
Yeah, we all can't be as cool as Springfield, so we're okay. Joplin's like a little younger brother, but that's okay. Yeah, we are so excited. Yeah. I don't know. We are excited though that this is brand new from last time we talked. There is a church building that we are seriously looking at acquiring for our church. And so if you're part of CTK, if you've missed the emails and announcements we've been sending around, we are going to view that property this coming Sunday, June 8th. After our service, we'll worship at our normal place, but then we are going to hit the road. It is straight east on, is it east? Yeah, east on 20th Street. Make sure I got my directions right. About 5 miles down the road from where we are, and we're going to look at that property. And then, Lord willing, we're going to vote on that as a congregation the Sunday after on the 15th. So we are so excited for that. CTK, if you're hearing this, please be checking your emails for updates on that. And if you're in Springfield or wherever you're listening to this, if you would please be praying for our church and praying for us that we'd have wisdom, that God would give us wisdom about what we should be doing in this situation. And we're very excited. We're optimistic, but of course we want to be humble as well and never presumptuous, and looking for the Lord's guiding in all this. But it would be a wonderful blessing to have our own building. So we're excited about that. So that's the news. That's the biggest thing going on right now. So we're very excited.
Yeah.
So hopefully, maybe next time we're together, we'll have even more news to share on the show, as it were. So, but we don't have anything else to say about that. We can just get into it here. And on this episode, what we're going to do, a while back, we've been talking and asking people to send in some questions and things that they've either heard people ask them about what we believe in our churches. We believe in Reformed theology. We're Presbyterian churches. What does that even mean? Why do we do these? Why do we do the things that we do? Why are we the way that we are? Those kinds of questions. And we got a lot of good ones. And so we're going to work through some of these, and we're just going to work through as many as we can. And we'll, if we don't get to some, or if there's others that come up, we'll have to do another episode like this at some point down the road. But I thought the way we do it, we'll just take turns asking each other some of these questions, and we'll just kick it around and see how it goes. So the first one I had, Dustin, for you, this came from a comment on YouTube. A while back, you guys, Gospel Fellowship, had a bowling event. And this is one of our members, actually, Christ the King. He asked, "Are you guys bowling on purpose? Like that? That's something that you guys actually wanted to do?" So, Dustin, do you guys actually like bowling?
You know what? We do. We do like bowling, and I had the fastest bowl, or pitch, or throw, or whatever, and I wasn't even sore the next day. So, I bet whoever commented that can't say the same thing. I think his name's Matt. Is that right?
Close.
Close.
Yeah,
like, Megan something, whatever. Anyway,
we'll go with Megan. Yeah. Well, we'll have to revisit this at some point and figure out what's going on over there, what you guys are up to. But we'll have to do that. A joint church. We'll start a Reformed bowling league. The ideas are just they're flowing. Anyway, for a real question, Dustin, one of the questions we get all the time, if you could just give us your brief definition or understanding, what is Reformed theology, and along with that, what is Calvinism? Are they the same thing? Are they different? What do we mean? What do we even mean by these terms that we talk about?
Yeah, and I'm this question is really applicable to me. I remember when I was in high school, and I had become a Christian not long, or in early high school, and as we're learning more, we're finding out more about theology and doctrine and what the Scripture says, and so early on, I would be saying, "Yeah, I'm Reformed, whatever." And eventually, you meet a Presbyterian and they would say, "Oh, so you believe this, and this?" And it's like, "Well, no, I don't believe that." It's like, "Oh, well, you're not Reformed, you're a Calvinist," And so those really aren't the same. And I know that the Theocast podcast guys did a discussion on this recently. But I actually, when I went to seminary, at a seminary which will not be named, I spoke with a guy who was in the RPCNA, and I said, "Yeah, I'm Reformed, and he was asking me some questions, and he was actually very, very kind and gentle, and he helped me see, like, man, you really don't know what you're talking about." And it was like, "Oh yeah, I don't, and I'm really excited to get to learn," And so anyway, Calvinism and Reformed theology share a lot of things. And so if you are Reformed, you are most likely a Calvinist, although there could be some very strange expressions where that would not be the case. But for all intents and purposes, if you're Reformed, you're a Calvinist. But you might be a Calvinist and not Reformed, right? And so the things that might mark you as a Calvinist but not Reformed would be your understanding of the relationship between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant, or where in the Bible is the Old Covenant and where in the Bible is the New Covenant. And so you might be a Calvinist Baptist, for example, and you would say, well, the Old Testament contains the Old Covenant and the New Testament contains the New Covenant, right? And a Reformed person would say, well, no, the line between the Old Covenant and New Covenant is at Genesis 3:15, not between Malachi and Matthew, but at Genesis 3:15, where there's the covenant of works given to and through Adam, our federal head there, and then he sinned, and then we sinned in him. And so, anyway, I'm going to go a little faster here. And then the gospel is preached by God himself to his people, Adam and Eve, and the new covenant the covenant of grace begins there. And so that's one way but there's other ways that mark off Reformed person, their view of the sacraments as opposed to the ordinances. A Reformed person is going to see that God gave us the two sacraments of baptism and the Lord's Supper, whereas a Calvinist might be Reformed and agree with the sacraments and what's happening there, or might be less so, Baptist or charismatic or whatever, and just see those the Lord's Supper and baptism as mere symbols. Being Reformed generally tends to have a Presbyterian polity or a Presbyterian government. And so where a church is led by elders, and those elders in that church are members of a presbytery, or what do the Reformed folks say?
Consistory and classis.
Consistory. Yeah. So there's different ways. We use some funny terms sometimes. But anyway, there's those things, right? Those things are the differences between Reformed theology and just Calvinism. Calvinism is an understanding. When that term is used, generally what it's being used as is an understanding of how God saves sinners. It's through his election, his predestinating, and so that's Calvinism. But Reformed theology is all that, and a blessed number of wonderful things that are more in addition to those things.
Yeah, exactly. We will do some episodes on like Calvinism at some point, and like the doctrines of grace, or TULIP. That acronym is used, and people know that. So, and we won't get into all that now, but Reformed theology is much more than just those 5 points regarding soteriology, or how God saves, and all that goes into that. So I think you're exactly right. It's Reformed theology. It's holistic and embraces not just one aspect of our theology, but it's a whole system of doctrine. It's also a system of worship. There's theology. There's also our worship and how our practice. This is the R. Scott Clark, his Reformed theology, piety, and practice, and his book Recovering the Reformed Confession, and the Heidel cast, and all that stuff. So good, but it's much more than just these 5 different points of doctrine, like he said. Much more than just that. Yeah.
And, we get all of this doctrine from the Scripture. And so, Levi, isn't, for our next question, isn't the Scripture sufficient? You mentioned the Heidelcast, but from the Heidelberg Catechism, we as Reformed Presbyterians have the Westminster Standards, the Confession, Shorter Catechism, and Larger Catechism. But we don't need any of that stuff. We've got the Bible. The Bible is clear, and so we don't need any of that stuff, right?
Yeah, we hear this all the time, and the short answer is we do, because the Bible is sufficient for us, but we are not sufficient for the Bible. We are not sufficient in our abilities to understand the Bible properly or correctly, to exegete it correctly, to understand it well. Why wouldn't we go to saints that have gone before us and have done so much hard work, heavy lifting, blood, sweat, and tears, who've given their lives even to crafting concise, rich, biblical, true creeds and confessions. Why wouldn't we want to embrace those and to use those? So that's kind of just my initial just appeal. Like, yes, these are so good. Not because they're above Scripture, not because they replace Scripture. They're subordinate to Scripture. Scripture is the sole infallible rule of faith and life. But it is not our only rule. It's not our only authority. There's others that are very helpful. That insofar as they agree with Scripture, which is the infallible rule. So what are these creeds and confessions? Well, we talk about them a lot, but the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, and the Athanasian Creed, those ancient ecumenical creeds, we confess those. And then our confessions. You mentioned the Westminster Standards, Westminster Confession of Faith, and the larger and shorter catechisms, which are a series of questions and answers that help explain what the Bible teaches. And there's tons more. There's also the three forms of unity that our Reformed and Dutch Continental brothers use as their doctrinal standards. So the Heidelberg Catechism you mentioned, the Belgic Confession, and the Synod of Dort, or the Canons of Dort. These are all just wonderful, faithful expressions of biblical teaching. And so it makes sense that we would use them. We're getting ready to celebrate Trinity Sunday in a couple Sundays. We're going to confess the Nicene Creed together, 1,700 years since the Council of Nicaea in 325. And I was just listening to some podcasts and reading some stuff about Nicaea and about how the creed developed. And this is the last thing I'll say on this point is, they're making the helpful observation that you have figures like Arius, who are denying the deity of the Son, and that he was a created being, that there was a time when he was not, so on and so forth. Well, why is Arius doing this? He's quoting Scripture.
Yeah.
He's trying to make sense of the biblical data. He's trying to make sense of Scripture, and the church together has to come together and say, no, the way you're interpreting Scripture is wrong. This is the proper interpretation of Scripture, and that's where we get the creeds like this. That's where they come from. So every heretic has quoted Scripture, and I just think that should give us pause. We don't want to just reject these wholesale, especially because of how important they were, the historical context that they come from, the fierce battles that raged over these important issues, like Christology, like the Trinity, these kinds of things. So they're so helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you were to ask, if someone were to ask you, or you listener, right, friend of the pod, how do you know that? How do you know something about the Bible? Like, how do you know how God saves you, or how do you know that Jesus is? How would you articulate the doctrine of the Trinity? Right? You could go to Scripture and quote Scripture, right? Just like Arius did, and just like the faithful saints will do. But then we also make other statements about them, and that's theology. That's doing theology, and it's almost like, don't you think it would be a good idea to write some of those verses down to be able to answer a non-Christian who we're sharing the gospel with, and they have good questions that we want to give answers to? You might write that down and just have that as a quick reference. Well, what about questions that you haven't thought about? Well, maybe you write those down too, those down too, those down too. You've come up with a small little confession, and that's okay. And that's what the church is doing with these creeds, catechisms, and confessions of saying, hey, we worked really hard and articulated this thing, and here it is now. And we would say, you know what? That's really, really good. I'm going to submit to teach that because it's what the Scripture says. So I think it's saving time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. This is another helpful point: is it's inevitable So as soon as somebody says, well, I just believe in Jesus, and then I'd ask, well, what do you believe about Jesus? And then as soon as you say, well, I believe this, you're stating a creed.
Yeah.
Credo means I believe. That's what the word creed means. It's a statement of faith. It's a statement of belief. So you will believe something. You will have some kind of creed or confession. And why not use some of these excellent ones that have stood the test of time? And we just think, they're so helpful, so beneficial, so necessary, so needed in our church. So we happily confess the creeds and confessions in our churches. We think they're wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So another question that we get quite a bit. So creeds and confessions can be they can feel kind of formal. Sometimes our worship services can feel like there's a structure to them, a formality to them. We talk about that as the liturgy or the order of worship. So a lot of questions we get, Dustin, is why do we have a liturgy like this? Why do we have such a structured order of worship? Isn't that quenching the spirit? Why can't we just worship God? So why do we have this kind of order to our worship?
I don't know. It is quenching. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so you think about it this way. All churches have a liturgy. They are very few churches, and you've got to imagine what that could look like if they have something different. But very few churches are not going to have a liturgy. Because if you don't have a liturgy, and a liturgy is just is an order of worship. Mm-hmm. It's more than that. It's at least that. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't have one, so that would mean each week you are thinking, well, what should we have in our worship service? What should come first, and then what should follow and follow and follow? And I mean, and I could absolutely imagine that some charismatic churches would do it that way, and they would just sit before the Lord, with a desire for humility, and just say, Lord, what would you have us do for our worship service? Actually, a friend of mine and I in high school tried to have a prayer meeting, start a regular prayer meeting at his house, and that's just what we're like. We're not going to have any agenda. We're just going to go and pray and see what happens. You know what I mean? And both of us I fell asleep not long after, and it didn't amount to anything. I think we met once, and that was it. Like, so okay, so that's the only alternative. Otherwise, it's like, every church has their worship service, and they usually do similar kinds of things. This starts, and then this, and then that, and then that. It's like this and like that and like this, and right. Maybe you should cut that. I don't know. Anyway, very boomer of me. So you have a liturgy. Your church has a liturgy, right? Unless it's like that. And so we would say, well, does the scripture either give us or require us to have some elements in our liturgy? And we would say, yes, it does, right? One, our liturgy follows a gospel pattern, right? Like we've said, and like Levi has said so well, so often, our liturgy, our worship is a form of dialogue. God speaks, we respond, back and forth. And we see that all over Scripture. And so we do that in our liturgy. And these are the elements that God has given to us, right? He speaks, we respond. He speaks, we respond. He speaks, we respond with words. He speaks, we respond with singing, with prayers, or with giving, or with all kinds of things. And so our churches, and if you're listening to this, you probably have a liturgy. And we would say, well, it's a good idea to have it follow biblical patterns. And it's not just a good idea. We would say that's what God requires of us, right? And so that's why we do liturgy, and that's why we do it the way we do it.
Yeah. And it's not that the exact, order is exactly, it doesn't come down on a golden tablet from heaven, but it's the elements that God gives us that we do in service, namely word, sacrament, and prayer. We those are the things that we are to do in worship, and we're not to do other things that might make sense, might be good on any other day to do, might be a good thing for Christians to do when they gather together in gatherings that are not the Lord's Day corporate worship service, but that doesn't mean that they should belong in the Sunday service itself. So we just did a whole series of videos on that. So if you're listening to this and you want to learn more, go and check out those liturgy series videos where we did a deep dive into those things. But liturgy is important. We're big liturgy fans,
right,
here at Reforming the Ozarks.
That's right. And we would say we didn't invent it, but some would say, thank you, give it up, that Calvin, who would say this? What's his name? Leighton Flowers would say this. Leighton Flowers. Let's get some clickbait with this. Leighton Flowers would say, if you've never heard about Jesus, if you've never heard the gospel, you've never read the Bible, you've never whatever, but you just open the Bible and you read it through, you would never get to a doctrine of predestination, although the Bible talks about it. You would never get there. So, because Calvin just made it up, right? Calvin's right. Isn't that true, Levi?
Well, first of all, you're putting your name in contention for the best segues. Those are a couple of good ones today so far. But we hear this all the time. We have 4 minutes left, so we're not going to be able to answer everything about predestination. We are going to do an episode on it, though. I can promise you that. Did he invent predestination? No, he didn't. And in fact, it wasn't even that. Predestination is not book 1, chapter 1 of Calvin's Institutes either. It was not the controlling doctrine of that everything else revolved around, but he does treat the doctrine of predestination as he does with all biblical doctrines, because it's biblical, because it's Scripture teaches it. I can remember when I was in college at Evangel University, which I loved my time there. We both loved and appreciated our time at Evangel. But I remember one class, I can't remember what class it was, but the professor asked the class, who here believes in predestination? And I was in my angsty cage, Calvin cage stage. So I was like I do. And I was the only hand raised in the class. And to his credit, to the professor's credit, he said everybody should have raised their hands because predestination is a biblical doctrine, a biblical concept. Now, we would disagree with his understanding of predestination as something, a corporate kind of understanding of predestination, which does not square with the biblical data at all. But no, it's a biblical term. So let me just read a couple of the classic texts. Romans 8, this is the golden chain of salvation, but Romans 8, 29 and 30, for those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those whom he predestined, he also called, and those whom he called, he also justified, and those whom he justified, he also glorified. And that beautiful truth that from eternity past to eternity future, if we can put it in those terms, our standing before God, our salvation has been secure in him. And what good news is that God has so loved us in this way, that he's accomplished everything. He accomplishes every step of the process, from foreknowledge and predestination to then effectual calling, the regeneration and the conversion that brings us and works faith in us. We're justified on account of Christ's righteousness imputed to us by that faith, received by faith alone. He sanctifies us. He will lead us to the end where we will be glorified in him. And predestination is one part of that just grand story of our salvation and of our redemption. So yeah, there's a ton more obviously we could say about it, and we will.
Right.
We'll do an episode on predestination at some point. I know people have that's always one of those questions that comes up. What about predestination? What about free will? That's one of the questions that we will address at some point. I promise, but not today.
Not today. Well,
We're out
and
of time.
it's a question that not only it sparks a lot of debate between Christians and other Christians, but also Christians and non-Christians. I was listening to a talk radio station that Levi made fun of me about before we got on here, and they were talking about this new movie. Well, I guess Luke Skywalker. I don't know whoever that guy is. I don't know anything. But he's acting in it. It's based off a Stephen King novella, and whatever. One of the questions was, is our fate controlled by some supernatural force? Are we just brains and vats? Like these are existential questions that people want answers to. And you know what? Levi's going to get you some on another episode. So
next time on Reforming the Ozarks, we will give you slightly unsatisfactory answers to the great questions of life. That's our new tagline.
I like it.
Oh man, yeah. Well, we are out of time. Unfortunately, I know we both got to get going. But that was fun. We'll have to do some more Q&A. If there's other questions you guys have, please let us know. Leave a comment or send us a message or grab us on a Sunday and tell us, hey, talk about this thing that's going on or this question that you have, and we would love to do that. Yeah. And hopefully we'll be back next week, and we'll try to be more regular. Dustin, anything that you have before we sign off?
No, I think we're working on an episode talking about General Assembly coming up soon. General Assembly is at the end of the month, and so I know Levi and I we're going together now, so going to be awesome. And we got work to do there. It's going to be really great. So we'll have some information on what General Assembly is. It's not just a conference. It's not optional. It's required good work for the sake of the kingdom, for the sake of our church, not just Gospel Fellowship or Christ the King, but all of our churches, because we are united together in mission. And so we'll talk more about that. But it'll be great.
Yeah, we look forward to that conversation, and I hope you guys do too. So we'll plan to see you guys next week for another episode. But until then, go to church.
Go to church.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Reforming the Ozarks. We would love to hear from you. You can reach us at reformingtheozarks@gmail.com. To learn more about our churches, visit ctkjoplin.com and gospelsgf.org. If you would like to partner with us in planting confessional and reformed churches right here in the Ozarks, go to gospelsgf.org and click on Make a Donation.